18-year-old Stephen loved me to death. 28-year-old Stephen sat in a flashy private room, laughing and saying, "I'm tired of sleeping with her." He had a young, gorgeous girl in his arms. I didn't cry or make a scene. I moved out of our shared apartment. The news of our breakup spread quickly. People were betting on when I'd go back to reconcile. That night, Stephen's cousin knocked on my door. "Sophia, my brother is old now. Why don't you try me? I'm young and energetic." On Stephen's 28th birthday, I was in a rush to finish a project, so I worked overtime. After work, I hurried to his birthday party. Outside the private room, I saw through a crack in the door that Stephen had a young, beautiful girl in his arms. I knew that girl. She was the new star being promoted by the entertainment company under K Group this year. Her. I'm already tired of her. Stephen's sarcastic voice came from the room. I paused. Sophia's figure is amazing. You're bored of that? Stephen continued, I've slept with her from 18 to 28, won't you get tired? Besides, he gently stroked the young girl's delicate face. Sophia, she's not young anymore. I was struck like lightning. The cake in my hand fell to the ground. Dozens of eyes inside the room turned to look at me. In the dim light, my face looked particularly pale. Sophia? Stephen's brother, sitting on the outside, cautiously opened his mouth. Everyone in the room, except the girl in Stephen's arms, had known me for years. I hadn't expected that even after all this time, this was their true nature. Stephen glanced at him. Don't call her that. Your sister-in-law is in my arms. The young girl blushed and snuggled closer to him. I dug my nails into my palms and stepped into the room, walking toward Stephen step by step. Finally, I stopped in front of him. Only then did I see that he was wearing a couple's ring. The other matching ring was on the girl's hand. I remembered in the 4th year of his business, he took off the couple's ring we had worn since college. He said, Sophia, wearing this in business meetings feels childish. Now, for another girl, he put on a couple's ring again. When the girl saw me, the blush on her cheeks disappeared and was replaced by fear. Stephen held her closer. Sophia, this is between you and me. Don't bully Wendy. Before I could say a word, Stephen had already sentenced me. I took a deep breath and looked at Stephen. Aren't you going to explain? Stephen said, since you already know, I'll be straightforward. Let's break up. I don't want to wrong Wendy. I want to give her a status. I couldn't help but laugh. Stephen, if you didn't want to wrong her, you shouldn't have been with her before we officially broke up. You made her the other woman in our relationship. Stephen shouted, Sophia. The girl in his arms started crying softly. Without raising his head, he comforted her gently. If you dare say anything like that to Wendy again, I'll make sure you can't stay in Los Angeles. Everything was a blur as I left the room. Stephen and I had been college sweethearts. He fell in love with me at first sight. When he pursued me, he was thoughtful and considerate. He wanted to bring me the best things in the world, just to make me smile. We started dating in our freshman year. After we got together, Stephen only had eyes for me. He publicly declared his love for me, making sure everyone knew. He chased away all my admirers. He wore my hair tie on his wrist to show that he was taken. He used to love me deeply. Now, he really doesn't love me, not even a bit. I'm not the kind of person who begs someone to stay when they no longer love me. What hurts the most is that we've been together for so many years. If he didn't like me anymore, he could have just broken up with me. But he had to humiliate me in the worst way possible. He knew my mom had postpartum depression and ended her life because my dad had a mistress. I took a cab back to the place Stephen and I shared. Stephen is the only son of the top family behind K Group in Los Angeles, and his parents never liked me. During our senior year in college, he moved out of the family home to start his own business. He was a pampered young master, but for me, he moved into a tiny, 20-square-meter apartment. On the first night in that small apartment, he held me and said, Sophia, as long as I'm with you, I'm willing to do anything. Later, he became successful. In just 4 years, the company he built from scratch went public. His parents finally gave in and accepted our relationship. When I was dreaming about our future wedding, he stopped mentioning marriage. I brought it up myself, but he would always say he wanted to enjoy a few more years of just us. Steven's change of heart had started to show a while ago. I'd seen how he loved me before, so I could tell at a glance when he stopped loving me. Just couldn't let him go. Couldn't let go of our decade-long relationship filled with ups and downs. Over the years, I made some money through my job and Steven's support. When I sensed he wasn't the same, I bought a small, 2-bedroom apartment. I finished packing my things by 1 a.m. As I dragged my suitcase towards the door, I heard the sound of someone entering the password. I didn't expect Steven to come back tonight. He used to come home late, but back then, he was just putting on a show for my sake. Now that we had broken up, there was no need for him to act. Steven pushed open the door and seemed slightly stunned to see the suitcase by my feet. He frowned and said, "Move out tomorrow. Sleep with me tonight first." I chuckled coldly, "Steven, we've already broken up. If you want someone to sleep with, go find Miss Wendy. I'm not that cheap to throw a farewell clap ceremony. She's too gentle, I don't want to hurt her." Steven stopped in front of me. He leaned in to kiss me, but I turned my head away. "Steven, it's been 10 years. Do you think I wouldn't get tired of this? You keep using the same tricks. I really can't find any interest in you." With each word, the air between us got thinner. I took a step back to put some distance between us and scoffed, "We're done. Stop being pathetic. I'm not someone who settles for less." Steven treated me like that, so I wouldn't show him any kindness. Steven's face darkened. He gritted his teeth, "Sophia, good for you. If you leave today, don't ever come back." I sneered. Did he really think I'd come crawling back after he cheated so blatantly? He really underestimated me. Even if I loved him, I wouldn't trample my dignity for him. I grabbed my suitcase and walked out without hesitation. As I shut the door, I heard the sound of a glass shattering inside. After moving into my new place, I tidied up a bit. I took a shower and sat on the living room couch to watch a movie. Sadness overwhelmed me. All the good memories played in my mind like a movie. It ended on the scene of Steven holding Wendy. I downed the glass of water on the coffee table. I told myself, "Sophia, it'll all pass." There was a knock at the door, and I glanced at the clock. It was 2 a.m. I wondered who would come at this hour. I looked through the peephole and saw a familiar face. I opened the door. "Did Steven send you?" Standing there was Steven's cousin, Eric. He was 4 years younger than Steven. We didn't interact much. No, he didn't. He looked nervous, and I was confused. Eric had a bold and rebellious personality. He always seemed to look down on everyone. He then said something that floored me, "Sophia, my brother is getting old. Why don't you try me? I'm young and strong." What? I thought I misheard. Isn't Eric supposed to hate girls? As I shut the door, Eric's kiss came crashing down on me. This was my first kiss with someone other than Steven. Oddly, I kind of liked it. Maybe it's because Eric's face was just too good looking. He was exactly my type. The first time we met, Steven and I had been dating for 4 years. Steven had already moved out of his house to be with me for over a year. Our relationship was strong then. In terms of looks, Steven wasn't really my type. Steven was the sunny, handsome guy, while Eric had a rebellious charm. 18-year-old Steven's love was grand and remarkable. It made me feel loved, and I quickly fell for him. Eric and I didn't even make it out of the hallway. No wonder he dared to talk big. He had the goods to back it up. His passion almost drowned me. Such passion was something Steven and I hadn't shared in a long time. As Steven said, 10 years is a long time. The initial fervor had faded. These last couple of years, even when we shared a bed, we usually just slept holding each other. Maybe breaking up was the best outcome for us. It's just that he sullied our relationship in the end. Sophia, feeling good? Eric's eyes sparkled as he looked at me. The undisguised affection in his eyes made me falter for a moment. Once upon a time, Steven looked at me like that too. Sophia. When I didn't answer, Eric teased me further. I eventually surrendered. Satisfied with my response, Eric got even more intense. Sophia, hold me. Compliantly, I wrapped my arms around his neck, and he carried me from the couch to the bedroom. By the end, I was completely out. When I woke up, he was already gone. My body felt like it had been run over by a truck. I murmured to myself, Eric sure doesn't seem like someone who has never dated before. His skills were leagues beyond what Steven had. I got out of bed. Last night was my final indulgence. The company in New York wanted to open a new branch and wanted me to oversee it. I had been hesitant because of Steven. Now that we broke up, I decided to accept the transfer. I've only been back to New York once since I graduated. I opened the door to go freshen up. The smell of food hit my nose, and I looked up to see Eric cooking eggs in the open kitchen. I was stunned. I didn't expect Eric to do something like this. I thought he had left. He must have sensed my gaze and turned to look at me. When he saw me, his eyes lit up with a warm glow. The morning sunlight bathed him, giving him a golden hue. My long dormant heart began to stir. I could almost hear my own heartbeat. Sophia, you're up. Breakfast will be ready soon. His eyebrows raised as he spoke, looking incredibly happy. Suppressing my emotions, I responded with a faint HM. I hadn't planned on anything further with Eric. That 10-year relationship with Steven had drained all my energy. I couldn't handle another relationship without a future. Plus, Eric was only 24. Our differences weren't just in age but also in family background. His family background rivaled Steven's or even surpassed it. While eating breakfast, Eric said he wanted to take me out later. Seeing his eager expression, I didn't refuse. I bought a ticket to fly to New York on Monday. After tomorrow, I'll completely cut ties with Steven. I never expected Eric would bring me to an amusement park. Since my dad remarried, he's been focused on his new family. When I was a kid, no one took me to amusement parks. The first time Steven took me to an amusement park, he sympathized with what I said. He said, Sophia, why don't we come here every year from now on? For the first 6 years, we did come every year. Starting from the 7th year, though, he got really busy with work, and I told him it was okay. After that, I haven't been back once. Sophia. I turned around at the sound of my name. Eric had put purple bunny ears on my head. Yep, they suit you perfectly. He grinned, then took my hand. Eric said, when I was a kid, my parents were busy with work too. No one brought me here. This is my first time at an amusement park. I looked at Eric's profile. I didn't expect us to share similar childhoods. Sophia, wanna go bungee jumping? I love thrill rides. Steven was afraid of heights but still joined me on some rides. But we never tried bungee jumping. When Eric held me as we jumped together, all the stress from work and the heartache from being cheated on disappeared with our screams. Sophia, here's to new beginnings. The day after our breakup, Steven showed up at a friend's get-together with huge dark circles under his eyes. Seeing he didn't bring Wendy, his friend Roger nudged him. Where's your girl today? Steven irritably replied, we broke up, didn't we? Remembering Sophia's words from early that morning, Steven's face turned sour. Broke up with both of them? Roger probed. Steven snapped back to reality. At the mention of a girl, he instinctively thought of Sophia, which made him feel even worse. She's filming today, so she's busy. Roger patted his shoulder. Steven, Sophia's got a stubborn streak. If you really want to work things out with her, you'd better break it off with Wendy for good. Before Roger could finish, Steven smashed the cup in his hand on the ground. She's just spoiled by me. Ignore her for a few days, and she'll come back begging for reconciliation. Roger wanted to say more but held back. Another friend chimed in, trying to ease the tension. Yeah, Steven's always been too good to her. In our circle, who doesn't have a side piece or two? Steven's been faithful to her for so many years. They quickly glossed over the topic. Holding his glass, Steven's grip tightened. Even if she did come back begging, he wouldn't forgive her easily. She needs to learn a lesson. As night fell, Eric and I got on the Ferris wheel. When it reached the top, his warm hand cupped my face, and his passionate kiss came down on me. I wrapped my arms around his neck. His kiss left me weak in the knees, and I slumped against him, helplessly. The Ferris wheel started descending from the top, and only then did he let me go. Sophia, I heard that if lovers kiss at the top of a Ferris wheel, they can be together forever. When he looked at me, his eyes were full of joy. I pressed my hand against his lips. We've reached the bottom. The Ferris wheel stopped. His smile faded, and the corners of his mouth drooped. I couldn't bear to see the sadness in his eyes, so I looked away. We shouldn't see each other anymore. With that, I walked out the door. On the way back, I felt a bit suffocated inside. I knew Eric was about to confess to me on the Ferris wheel. If I had met him when I was in my early 20s, I think I would have agreed to his confession without hesitation. But now I'm 28. I just ended a decade-long relationship. I can't be sure Eric won't turn out to be like Steven. I can't afford to waste another 10 years. When I got home, I took a shower and started packing. I decided to catch an earlier flight to New York, to visit my childhood friend. I rescheduled for a red-eye flight, arriving in New York at 8 in the morning. My childhood friend picked me up. The last time we met was at her wedding. Steven and I attended together. When she heard about my breakup with Steven, she was disappointed. But upon learning that Steven cheated, she was furious. Our Sophia is both beautiful and smart. Him ditching you for some talentless small-time actress? What a blind fool. I should set you up. My husband's got some really handsome friends. You can take your pick. Linda's words cracked me up. I'm not ready to date yet. I want to get our new office up and running first. Linda sighed. Sophia, don't let Steven's scummy behavior make you afraid of love. You're only 28. Your life is just beginning. Actually, it's good you broke up with Steven. He's in L. And you're here in New York. In New York, if anyone dares mess with you, I can make sure they're taken care of in under an hurry. Knew Linda always wanted me to return to New York. We've been friends since kindergarten. But seeing Steven treating me so well and loving me so much, she was genuinely happy for me. The first month in New York, I was swamped with work. After setting up the new office and hiring the right people, I finally got a brief moment to catch my breath. Today, I didn't work late and planned to get home early for some rest. But just as I parked my car, my phone rang. I saw it was a number from L. I thought it might be a friend. The call connected, and an impatient voice came through the receiver. Sophia, come get your stuff. Wendy's moving in. I don't want them here. I didn't expect Steven to call me. And for this reason. I said calmly, throw it away. You want me to throw it away? Do you know what those are? Steven's voice was full of disbelief. Of course, I knew those things were gifts from him. I left them on purpose because I didn't want them. Steven took a moment to recompose himself. There's too much stuff. You need to come and pack it yourself. I'm not in LA. Get a housekeeping lady to take care of it. I'll cover the cost. With that, I hung up. For the rest of my life, I didn't want any ties with Steven. As I walked out of the elevator, I saw a familiar figure standing at the door. I stopped. The person at the door turned around. Sophia. Eric was wearing a khaki jacket, hands in pockets, with an unusual hint of grievance on his usually cocky face. What are you doing here? I knew Eric used to live in New York. But he had been living in LA since college and for 2 years after graduation. I didn't expect him to be back in New York. I don't need any titles. As he spoke, he walked towards me with large strides and hugged me. Try me more often. Maybe you'll find you can't live without me. I felt amused and rolled my eyes. I raised my hand to hug him back. How did you know I live here? Eric fell silent when he showed up here. I guessed he must have used his family connections. I won't do it again next time. You're planning on a next time? I smacked Eric on the head. Let go of me. I need to find the key and open the door. He nuzzled my shoulder before reluctantly letting go. As I searched for the key, he held my hand as if afraid I would run away. Once the door opened, his demeanor changed instantly. Like a hungry wolf, he pressed me against the door and kissed me forcefully. The sound of ripping fabric reached my ears. The buttons of my shirt fell one by one, like jade beads hitting the floor. Eric. This shirt is new. I had just gone shopping with Linda a few days ago. After a good part of the day, I found this shirt. Now, under Eric's hands, it had turned into rags. I'll go with you to buy another one tomorrow. He cut me off, denying me the chance to protest, leading me from the entrance to the bathroom, then to the bedroom. I lost count of the times. He was like a dog abandoned and then retrieved by his owner again and again. He whispered his longing in my ear. At dawn, I had already fallen into a deep sleep. But Eric was still tireless. I was scared of him, so I let him continue. What I didn't know was that not long after I fell asleep, my phone on the nightstand rang. Eric stopped and reached for the phone. Seeing the caller ID showing it was from LA, he almost instantly knew who was calling. Looking at my flickering eyelashes and slightly swollen lips, a dark light flashed in his eyes. Sophia, as you wished, I've dealt with Wendy. If you're done with your drama, come back quickly. Stephen's eyes flashed with regret as he spoke. He originally wanted to say, I was wrong. Come back soon. Without you, I can't sleep well every day. Back then, I was out of my mind. I was only curious about her for a brief moment. I never did anything with her. But instead, he said the opposite. Last night, he called to reconcile with Sophia. But the words Sophia said when she left had hurt him deeply. She said she was tired of him. Low laughter entered Stephen's ears. His face darkened instantly. Who are you? You woke me up this early by calling Sophia. Who do you think I am? Stephen gripped the phone, his knuckles turning white. Put Sophia on the phone. Sophia is still groggy. She can't take your call right now. Stephen's eyes turned red, and he grit his teeth. Sophia is my girlfriend. You dare touch her? Eric laughed lightly. Do you need a reminder? You were caught cheating by Sophia. She's been single for a while now. With that, Eric didn't wait for the raging person on the other end to respond and hung up the call. Looking at Sophia's peaceful face, he sighed lightly. Sophia, what am I going to do with you? The next day, Linda came to visit me and ran into Eric making lunch for me. Her gossip radar went off. When she learned Eric was Stephen's cousin, she waved her hand dismissively. So what? Whether Eric is his cousin or his dad, you should hold on to him. A guy this handsome and who can cook isn't easy to find these days. I followed her gaze towards the kitchen. I couldn't deny it. The moment I saw Eric standing at my door yesterday, the emotions I suppressed in LA surged back. I knew it, I had feelings for Eric. The more I liked him, the more I worried about the future. I asked myself, can I really cross that divide? Linda seemed to notice my concerns. She took my hand, speaking earnestly. Sophia, you just experienced a failed relationship. It ended poorly because the person wasn't right. But not everyone is like Stephen. You said Eric never had a girlfriend before and isn't a player. I believe someone who can stay pure and selective in that environment won't cheat easily. You're still young, beautiful, and have a great figure. It's normal for him to like you. Give yourself a chance, and give him a chance, too, okay? Linda, my friend for over 20 years, managed to change my mind with just a few words. Starting a new relationship might not be a bad idea. That night, while Eric led me to the mountaintop, I hugged him and whispered in his ear, Eric, let's try dating. The man on me stiffened. After a moment, he held my face, ecstatic. Sophia, are you serious? His eyes were full of starlight, like a dazzling galaxy. I answered with action. The result? I took a day off the next day. During those days, we didn't rest at all. Eric's excitement couldn't be contained. I experienced firsthand what he meant by youthful energy. Stephen means nothing. In the private room, friends watched Stephen chugging down drinks. Roger answered, we can't find her. Stephen's been combing through Los Angeles for days. But there's no sign of Sophia. Roger, call her. Stephen, who was drinking, looked up. Facing their gazes, Roger reluctantly took out his phone. After 2 rings, the call was picked up. Roger put it on speaker. Sophia, where are you? Stephen is drunk, can you come get him? Stephen pretended not to care, but his ears were perked up. Roger, you called the wrong number. If he's drunk, call Wendy. Roger replied, no, Stephen is just fooling around with Wendy. Stephen has only ever cared about you. Suddenly, a male voice came from the phone. Sophia, how about this bracelet? All eyes turned to Stephen. Stephen's face turned icy, and in an instant, the glass in his hand shattered. Bright red blood dripped from his hand onto the floor. Bro, Stephen, he. Roger tried to continue. But the person on the other end interrupted him. Roger, I'm in New York, I can't pick up Stephen. Besides, I'm with my boyfriend buying gifts now, and we're having dinner at his place later. The phone hung up, leaving a beeping sound in the silent room. Stephen's expression was terrifying, and the blood kept pouring out of his hand. A friend cautiously spoke, Stephen, she's just mad, trying to get back at you. Apologize properly, she loves you, she'll forgive you. Stephen stood up abruptly. Yes. Sophia is mad. She loves him so much. How could she leave him? If he apologizes, she will forgive him. Just like all the other times they argued. I felt nervous when Eric and I arrived at his family's hillside villa. I had been to Stephen's villa before. Stephen's parents wouldn't even let me in. He loved me so much he couldn't bear to see me mistreated. He took me away immediately. I feared the same thing might happen again. But seeing Eric's pitiful look, my heart softened. A middle-aged man opened the door and greeted me warmly, Miss Sophia. Come in, Eric told us early today you'd be joining for dinner. Sir and ma'am are waiting inside. Eric told me to call him Bob. Bob was the family butler. As I changed my shoes, Eric squeezed my hand, don't be nervous, my family is nice. Even though Eric reassured me on the way, I was still nervous. I've never had the best luck with parents. My dad never liked me growing up, and my boyfriend's parents didn't like me either. Meeting Eric's parents, I was prepared for the worst. I decided that if they disapproved, I'd just date him without any plans for more. To my surprise, his parents were genuinely kind. Eric's mom enthusiastically pulled me to sit on the couch. Eric never liked hanging out with girls. I was worried he'd be a bachelor forever. When he sent me your photo, I liked you immediately. This picky boy finally chose someone good. Eric's mom smiled warmly as she spoke. She was worlds apart from Stephen's mom, who was clearly a sharp, capable woman. Eric's mom radiated gentleness. She exuded maternal warmth that made one naturally fond of her. Eric, sitting beside me, hooked my pinky with his, raising an eyebrow. His look said, see? I wasn't lying. I smiled back. Linda was right, different people bring different experiences. Dinner at Eric's place was warm and delightful. Everyone was genuinely welcoming. I knew Eric probably had a hand in this. Before we left, his mom held my hand, smiling. Sophia, we aren't the type of people who worry about superficial things. We earn money so our kids can live comfortably. As long as Eric is happy, we won't say a word. I know you're a good kid. We were always busy with work and neglected Eric. He never had anything he especially liked. But he's been determined about you for years. And he hopes you both can be really happy. I felt a lump in my throat. Auntie, we will be. From the moment we got in the car, tears streamed down my face like beads on a broken string. I couldn't stop crying, which worried Eric. As soon as we parked in the garage, he unbuckled himself and hugged me. Did my parents scare you? He asked gently. I shook my head in his arms. I've never received parental love, only cold stares from Steven's family. Being treated so warmly by your parents overwhelmed me. Eric, I like you so much. I hugged him tightly. For the past week or so spending time with him, he introduced me to his friends and family. They were all very respectful and enthusiastic toward me. Eric's friends were different from Steven's crowd. Steven's friends always called him a breath of fresh air because Steven wouldn't mess around with women like they did. Among Eric's friends, some had girlfriends they'd been with for years, and others were already married. They all seemed to have strong relationships. This was Eric's first time hearing my confession. He didn't even know where to put his hands and feet. He leaned close to my ear and, like a kid asking for candy, begged me to say it again. I smiled. Over and over, I told him I like you. Back home, Eric was even more over the top than before, especially during moments of intimacy when he'd have me keep confessing to him. He was so childish, but I loved it so much. After a bath, he held me and we had just gotten into bed when the doorbell rang. I'll go check, you go ahead and sleep, he said, planting a kiss on my forehead before getting up and leaving the bedroom. Steven stood nervously at the door, holding a bouquet of lilies. He thought of all the things he wanted to say to Sophia, wanting to get everything off his chest once and for all. He had a red velvet ring box in his pocket. He was planning to propose to Sophia tonight. They had been together for 10 years, he should have proposed long ago. This way, they would never be apart. Even though just a minute had passed, it felt like an eternity to him, like when he first started courting Sophia. He still remembered how nervous he was the first time he sent her a message after getting her Instagram handle. His hands trembled. The door opened. Sophia. Steven's smile faded instantly when he saw Eric's face. Eric was wearing nothing but loose shorts. Red crescent-shaped marks on his muscular arms stood out starkly, and mixed male and female clothes were scattered on the floor. Steven couldn't believe his eyes, grinding his teeth. Steven said, Eric, she's your cousin-in-law. Eric crossed his arms and looked haughtily at the man outside. Cousin-in-law? You really like to daydream, don't you? Do you think that after you cheated, Sophia would just forgive you? Steven's eyes were bloodshot. You bastard. A soft, raspy voice came from inside, close and affectionate, driving Steven to the brink. Eric, aren't you coming back? Just as Steven opened the box, Eric clutched his face and cried out in pain. I heard the commotion outside and thought something had happened to Eric. I ran to the living room, gripping my robe. I saw Steven's fist about to land on Eric, and I shouted, Steven, stop. He froze when he saw me. I quickly ran over to check on Eric's injuries. His lips were split. My heart ached. Steven, are you insane? Coming over at this hour to hit someone? I glared coldly at Steven. Not only did he cheat, but now he was causing trouble at my place. I couldn't understand what he was thinking. We had 10 years together, and even after breaking up, I hadn't wanted things to get ugly. Sophia, you're yelling at me for him? Steven's face was as pale as a sheet. He pointed at Eric next to me. He knew you were my girlfriend, but he took advantage of our fight to step in. Steven, we broke up long ago. No, Sophia, I never wanted to break up with you. It was just a fleeting distraction. The only one I love is you, the only one I want to marry is you. Steven frantically took out the ring box from his pocket. Sophia, marry me. Sophia, my face really hurts. Can you check if it's gonna leave a mark? Just as Steven opened the box, Eric clutched his face and cried out in pain. I completely ignored what Steven was saying and worriedly turned to check Eric's face. Eric both spoke and glanced provocatively at Steven. Sophia, his punch was really hard. He probably hopes you won't like me anymore if my face is ruined. How could that be? I'd like you no matter what you look like. I knew Eric was doing it on purpose. He was over-exaggerating, but he liked me, and I liked him. His childish jealousy made me feel appreciated. Seeing me use the same gentle tone with Eric that I used to use with him, Steven's face was drained of color, as if it had shattered. Sophia, don't treat me like this. Turning around, I faced that pale face without a hint of emotion. Steven, you knew why my mom died, yet you still went outside and sought other women to spite me. You should have thought about this the moment you cheated. I will never be with a cheater. Eric chimed in from the side, Sophia, I would never do that. I'm the most faithful ever. After shutting the door, Eric's face fell immediately. He actually wanted to propose to you. He looked incredibly furious. Standing on tiptoe, I kissed him on the lips. I don't like him and I won't marry him. Eric's eyes lit up. You like me, so you will marry me. I chuckled. Eric pulled out a pink diamond ring as if by magic. Stunned, I took a moment to process it. Watching Eric kneel on one knee, he said, Sophia, I will always treat you well. His gaze was passionate and sincere. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I couldn't refuse him at that moment. When Linda saw the dazzling pink diamond on my hand, her mouth dropped. She gave me a thumbs up. Not only are you in great shape, but you get things done fast. She made me laugh. I heard Steven is also in New York now? I nodded. These past few days, Steven's car had been parked outside my office building every day. He said he didn't mind me being with Eric. He cheated once, I cheated once. We're even now, as long as we live well together from now on, that's all that matters. I was so angry at Steven's words that my brain felt like it was going to explode. He stubbornly believed I was with Eric to get back at him. I really don't have the time for such petty revenge. The New York branch had just started, and as the person in charge, I was so busy my feet didn't touch the ground. Even Eric said I was neglecting him because of work. Whenever I had free time, he'd take me out to have fun. Our wedding was even mostly prepared by Eric's mom. If I didn't love him, I wouldn't have carved time out of my already busy schedule to date him. After saying goodbye to Linda, I saw Steven again in the parking lot. He was smoking next to my car. In less than half a month, he had lost a ton of weight. He looked defeated. Sophia, he said as soon as he saw me, immediately stubbing out his cigarette. I really hate the smell of smoke. He had picked up smoking when he was under a lot of stress, but he quit because I didn't like it. Don't come anymore, I said as I looked at his awkward, cautious face. In the end, I didn't say anything hurtful. He had hurt me. But I can't deny the fact that he did a lot for me over the past 10 years. He used love to help me reshape my worldview, transforming me from the sensitive, insecure Sophia into the confident and strong Sophia I am now. I don't want to hate him. You only hate when you have love. I no longer love him, so I don't hate him either. For the rest of my life, he'll just be Eric's cousin to me. The light in Steven's eyes slowly faded. He said I'm sorry and left, hunched over, the swagger he once had completely gone. Sophia. Not far away, Steven opened the car door and waved at me. He strode over to me. Weren't you supposed to work late? Why are you here to pick me up? Work isn't more important than you. He took my hand, our fingers intertwined, the sunset casting long shadows around us. Mom's cooking dinner herself today. She's waiting for us to come home and eat. Then let's hurry back and not keep her waiting. The cool autumn breeze lifted my hair. I looked at the person beside me. Our future was just beginning. Steven's epilogue, I still don't know why I was so foolish. When I first met Wendy, she was shy, very much like Sophia 10 years ago. I fell in love with Sophia at first sight. She was beautiful but lacked confidence. A casual word from someone could make her overthink things. After we got together, I learned it was due to her upbringing. Her dad was always critical of her. It broke my heart. My Sophia deserved the best of everything. In college, I introduced her to my Twitter circle and took her everywhere. Everything she never had, I wanted to give her. She gradually became confident and found her passion. I loved watching her shine in her field of interest. That Sophia was dazzling and wonderful. In our senior year, my parents found out about our relationship and pressured me to break up with Sophia. Of course, I refused. I moved out on my own. I believed I could give Sophia a good life. When I started my business, Sophia always encouraged me. No matter how tired I was, coming home to see her smile made me feel like I could work for 2 more hours the next day. As my business grew, I got busier. No matter how late it was, I would always come home. I couldn't sleep without Sophia next to me. I told myself I'd marry her once I made enough money. That was my goal from the first day I started my business. But when did I start forgetting that? In the 7th year of being with Sophia, I felt my feelings for her fade. In the 8th year, my parents approved of our relationship, and Sophia brought up marriage. My first reaction was to avoid it. Sophia mentioned marriage twice more, and I used work as an excuse to refuse. At that time, I didn't know she had already noticed my distance. She was giving me chances. But I didn't cherish them. I even let myself get involved with Wendy. Wendy climbed into my bed, but I didn't touch her. I still couldn't take that step. I knew deep down that if I did, Sophia would see me as dirty. On my 28th birthday, Sophia said she had to work late. I let my guard down. I brought Wendy over. I didn't expect Sophia to come home early. She saw us, and I thought maybe it was a sign from above telling me it was time to break up. I told Sophia I wanted to break up. But as soon as I said it, I regretted it. I was distracted, drinking, and when I came home early in the morning, I saw Sophia with her suitcase. I asked her to sleep with me. That was my way of begging for reconciliation. I had been on a pedestal for years, and I couldn't bring myself to ask directly for her back. But Sophia said she was tired of me. I was furious. She left resolutely. After a month, I finally couldn't resist calling her. She was cold. My ridiculous pride came into play, and the call ended disastrously. That night I called again. A man answered. His voice seemed strangely familiar. I began frantically searching for news about Sophia. I found out she wasn't in Los Angeles anymore. I went to great lengths to find her. Someone was deliberately hiding her whereabouts. It wasn't until Roger called that I knew Sophia had returned to New York. I found her place after some effort. I wasn't surprised to see my cousin there. But in a way, I wasn't surprised. The first time Eric looked at Sophia, I already didn't like it. After that, I deliberately reduced their interactions. I never thought that my moment of foolishness would actually give him an opening. My Sophia, she really left me. I went to Sophia's wedding. She wore a wedding dress and looked stunningly beautiful. Her face beamed with a happy smile that left me in a daze. I realized I hadn't seen Sophia smile like that in a long time. I knew she was truly in love with Eric. After the wedding, I returned to Los Angeles. I didn't dare contact her again, just secretly checked her Twitter often. I wanted to see how she was doing. My worry was pretty unnecessary. Eric treated her very well, almost spoiling her to the sky. I completely lost the girl I loved the most, and for the rest of my life, I could only live in regret and longing. Eric's epilogue. The first time I saw Sophia was in a cemetery. I was just 14 then. She was crying so hard, her eyes were red, like a pitiful little bunny. I've always hated seeing girls cry. But seeing her cry, I somehow offered her a handkerchief. When she looked up and thanked me, her voice was soft. That one look, I remembered it for many years. We met again when I was 18. I was in Los Angeles for school and went to visit my cousin. We had always been close. I recognized her right away. She seemed to have no impression of me. She and my cousin were very close. Every day, I watched their happy life like a peeping Tom. Until the year I turned 24, I heard from my cousin's friend that they had broken up. I knew my chance had come. Though it was despicable, I wanted her badly. She was surprised to see me. My words shocked her so much her eyes nearly popped out. But she didn't reject me, was overjoyed, determined to impress her. The next day, when I wanted to confess, she seemed to have seen it coming and stopped me, saying we shouldn't meet again. At that moment, my world felt like it collapsed. I wondered if it was my performance last night that she wasn't satisfied with. Not even wanting to see me. I was dejected for a long time until my childhood friend's call woke me up. She had just ended a 10-year relationship and must be too drained to start a new one so soon. And besides, I was her ex's cousin. She must have a lot to consider. I jumped up from bed immediately. When I went to her house again, she was already gone, but I used my family connections to find her. I was nervous when I went to find her. I could wait, and I didn't need any titles. I just wanted to be with her. She still didn't reject me like the first time. I never expected even more incredibly happy news to follow. When she whispered the word together in my ear. I felt even dying at that moment would be worth it, but of course, I couldn't die. If I died, who would take care of her? I couldn't let anyone else take care of her. Everything went smoothly afterward, and now we've been married for 10 years, and I still love her as much as I did at the beginning. We didn't have kids. Because I didn't want her to endure the pain. And partly because of her family background, she was afraid she couldn't raise a child well. She once considered stepping back. I stopped her. With me, she'll never need to compromise. Why are you awake so early? I gently stroked the person in my arms and kissed her face. Yesterday was our 10-year wedding anniversary. She specially took a day off, and we spent a whole day and night in the villa without stopping. She was exhausted. Still asleep. She murmured something, wrapped her arms around my waist, and snuggled closer. Honey, lie down more, you're making it uncomfortable for me to sleep. Okay. I shifted down a bit, wrapping her completely in my arms. Honey, I love you. She mumbled again, then fell into a deep sleep. Holding her, my heart felt full and bursting. In the past 10 years, every day I thanked that I was brave enough to knock on her door. The greatest joy in life is none other than the person you loved when young, still being by your side when middle-aged. With her, I walked alone for 10 years. Then we walked together for another 10 years. And in the future, we will be together for many more decades.